Hello.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Jim Cirile and Tanya Klein here from Coverage Inc., the leader in screenplay analysis, development, and editing services for 7,262 years. What's up, Tanya?
How are you, Jim?
Eh, you know,
Yeah,
eh.
okay.
What do we got on the docket today?
All right. Well, on the docket, we have writing assignments. How do I score a writing assignment? All right.
I
So,
I have no idea. Do you know? Tell me. I'd like to know.
all right. So, first, let's get to what are writing assignments. So, writing assignments are assignments you as a writer get for scripts or polishes or a second, third, 12th drafts that somebody actually pays you for. So it's not like you're sitting down following your muse and writing a spec script. It means somebody says, hey, there's this script that needs work, or hey, I have this idea. Can you write something? So the way it works, number one way it works is that you have covering agents at every agency, and they cover a grid of open writing assignments.
That's correct.
So, Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about covering agents and what they do and how they put up their clients?
Sure, sure, sure. Okay, so but before we get to that, and yes, that is important, but I think we also need to clarify that writing assignments really fall into two categories: paid, which is what everybody wants, and then what everybody actually gets, which are unpaid.
Unpaid. Let's go, let's put our best foot forward and start with paid.
All
So,
right, all
hey,
right.
covering agents at agencies.
Okay, so basically, all the major agencies and even quite a few of the larger management companies have people whose job it is just to maintain what they call the grid. They all have their own grid, right? Which is basically, different people call it different things. The OWA list, but basically, it's a tracking grid of open writing assignments. And so they might know we've got, Paramount has 17 different properties in varying different stages, and this is where they are, and they may be or are looking for a writer to come in for draft number 17 of Transformers 5. I know that's a Universal project, whatever. I'm spitballing here, folks. And so they may they keep tabs on where these projects are at any given time, and they disseminate this information through their organization, wherein the other agents see that and they say, oh, this might be a good fit for so and so client, let me put this client up for that. And the way that generally works is agents, and again sometimes managers, they have sometimes up to 4 meetings a day with industry: breakfast, lunch, drinks, and dinner, which means they can be out of office a lot. But the purpose of those is to constantly glad hand studio executives, development people, producers, anybody who's got stuff going on, or just to introduce themselves and constantly be building their network. And so during the course of these meetings, what they will do if they know that there is an open assignment coming up, they may say, "Hey, I have so and so. I represent so and so. Do you think they might be a good fit for the new draft of your Transformers movie? How about why don't you take a general with them and give them a shot, see what you feel about them?" And then that person may get a meeting. And then what happens after that depends on, how well you present, on your writing samples, on the politics of the situation, whether or not it's real or not. That's another thing. There's a lot of projects on the grid that are in varying stages of not being real. There's stuff that stays on there for years that is supposedly active that isn't really active at all. And people in the biz know what those things are. They know that this Star Wars project that Kathleen Kennedy has had up there for 6 years, that it's not really happening. Nobody's going to approve that. People know when stuff is real and they know when it's not real. So I'll tell you a quick anecdote. Back in the day when I used to be represented by William Morris, Um, I said to my agent at the time, hey, I happened to take a look at the open writing assignment list. That's a big no-no. They never want clients to see the list because you know what happens then? Clients do exactly what I did. And they come to them and they say, why don't you put me up for this assignment? Because we always say, look, I'd be a good fit for that. And what about this? But what you don't know is you're not going to get that. You're probably not going to get that meeting if they're looking for a writer at a different tier, or they're looking for a writer, with such and such cred, or the project's dead, it's not really moving forward. That executive's about to be out on their butt. There's a million different things going on that the writer doesn't know, but the agent does. But anyway, so I said to my agent, how about putting me up for this assignment? I'd really like to have a shot at this. And he is like, oh, no. Who sent you that? Who gave you the list? Nobody, you're not supposed to get the list. And of course, I had gotten the list from his assistant, but I didn't want to tell him that and get the assistant in trouble. So I was like, oh, just a, friend of mine, whatever, it's not important. And he refused to even engage on the topic of getting me that meeting, and instead was all just about like, plugging that hole in the dam. So just so you know, that's how that works. But generally, that's how tracking agents and the grid tend to
Yeah.
work.
And well, another thing about, yeah, no, clients never, ever, 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 writing clients never, ever, ever get to see the list. And also, one of the reasons for that is, apart from the agents not wanting to be pestered, is that they don't want to have uncomfortable conversations.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
an uncomfortable conversation like, well, why didn't you put up for that? Why did you put your other client up for that? And there might be numerous reasons. Maybe they don't like your writing style, maybe they don't think you're ready, maybe the producer hates you.
Yeah.
But also, Jim, I just realized we may have confused people, and we have to clarify something
Okay.
before we get questions about what do you mean the 17th writer on a project.
Hmm.
Because, if you look at the movie credits, it has one, maybe two, on very few occasions, maybe three writers on it. Um,
Yeah.
the reason for that are WGA rules. So
Right.
usually what happens is a project, especially when we're going to, I mean, always when we're talking about studio films and when we talk about mini major films and like even the big independents, um, the writer who writes the first draft usually gets credit, but also there might be several more writers that go through it and go through it and go through it and work on it. So there might be, for all we know, 17 writers on a script, and they all did
Right.
something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
nobody will ever know.
Exactly. And, back in the 90s, I did that. There's several projects that I worked on that I never got credit for. And that's perfectly fine. It's just how the biz works. You get paid, and that's great. And occasionally, you see the finished film and you're like, I wrote that line. Or, there's a chunk, a vestige of something you created or something you wrote still in there, and you're like, ugh. So, I actually took the WGA to task for that like years ago, with a letter campaign where I tried to get them to institute just simple rolling screen credit for any writer who worked on the project at all, whether their material was used or not. If they got paid, they got hired, and they worked on the script, they should at least be, I mean, the caterers and the grounds, the greens people, they all, the PAs who worked one day, they get credit. But you could have worked on this project for months and months and months, and they could still have pieces of what you did in the movie, and you'll never get credit for it. And you know what? The WJ is like, no, we need to maintain the illusion that movies are created by a singular person or persons, like one person or a writing team, or in some cases, uh, writing team and another creator, or in extreme cases, two writing teams, in which case you'll see sometimes four writers, and then occasionally there'll be a story by credit, and that can also be up to two people. So that's the most you'll ever see in terms of writing credits is six people. But you get the point.
Yeah. So now let's get to, because writing assignments, the type of writing assignments we just talked about, of course, are paid. Well, let's get to the writing assignments that is, that you might get more of, especially if you're still in kind of the beginning or even mid phases of your career. And those are unpaid.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, but before let me just add a little tag onto what we were just talking about. Um, Occasionally, we'll get clients here at Coverage Inc. who will email and they say, "Hey, I've heard such and such studio is rebooting some property that, some book or something that I'm really passionate about. How can I get a shot at that?" And the answer is you can't. You can't. That's what it comes down to. I mean, and when I say you can't, there is always a tiny, tiny outside shot, and I'll give you a for instance. So, um, around 20 years or so ago, a little bit longer actually, we you know what? I'm not going to tell this story. I'm going to leave this story out right now. I don't want to tell the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy story because it will make me cry. Um, Oh, fuck it. I've already started. I might as well. Okay, so my writing partner at the time and my writing partner was friends with a vice president at an agency. And the vice president read one of our scripts and liked it. And he said to my writing partner, Chris, "Hey, they've been looking for a writer for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They've had a bunch of writers. No one's been able to crack it. I think, based on the sample that he had read, you guys might be able to do it. So here's what I'm going to recommend you do, and this will segue into the next segment we're talking about, Tanya, which is if you guys write a draft, then I will send it over to the production company, and I can't guarantee you anything, but basically it'll act as a writing sample, and if they like it, we'll get you in the door, we'll get you a meeting, and then who knows from there." So Chris and I were like, okay. And because we're both huge Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fans, and we spent the next 3 months cranking out a draft, sent it along to the agent for coverage. A couple weeks later, he got back to us, kind of stunned, like, "Well, the coverage was actually really good. Okay, I guess I have to do what I said I was going to do." And he sent it over, and we waited and we waited and we waited, and finally we heard that they had hired Carrie Kirkpatrick, the writer of Chicken Run, who was hot off Chicken Run, which was a hit movie that summer, to come in and finish Douglas Adams' last draft. And we were out in the cold. We never got a meeting. We never got anything. We did 3 months worth of work because a VP at an agency suggested it to us. And we did. And we rolled the dice and we crapped out. You could call that an assignment. It was an assignment, but we didn't get paid for it, which I guess segues into what you were going to say next.
Unpaid writing assignments. So here's the thing. In the beginning and even in the mid level of your career, you will do quite a few of them. And
Yeah.
yes, and it can really suck. Why can it really suck? Because, well, you can spend many, many months, sometimes years, working on a project, and it never goes anywhere, and you never get paid.
Yeah.
And that is very, very sad. So how do unpaid writing assignments come about? Well, for example, you know a producer, and the producer says, "I have an idea." And then you're like, "Sure, I'll pitch on it. Let me pitch you some ideas."
Yeah.
And then you pitch ideas and you pitch ideas, and they go, "I like this idea." And you're like, "Okay, I will write this idea." And you write this idea until, it's a polished script. And in, in a perfect world, the producer would be able to raise the money and then get the movie made and pay you. However, what of course often happens with a lot of things in this business, they go away. They fall through, something happens, but the project does not come to fruition. That happens very often, and that is a risk you take. However, I
Yeah.
mean, here are a few things. Namely, okay, so number one, every writing job that you do will make you a better writer. Number two, it is about connections and it is about networking and about how you conduct yourself.
Yeah.
Because even
Politics.
politics, exactly, even in a situation that is, let's say, less than ideal and you don't get any of the things you had hoped for, if you can be cool about it and you can be the person that they want to work with, then you are the person that they will want to work with again when hopefully they have the money raised for another project.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
that's what we hope. But look, let's be clear about this, okay? Um, I, you folks out there, you are planning to break into the business and get writing assignments and be paid for your work. This is what we all want to do. Here's what you need to understand. 95% of what it's going to be is exactly what Tanya just said. Most of the work, most of the assignments that you will get, um, are unpaid. And it will be suggested to you that, look, we can't pay you for this, but if you do this, X could happen, like with the Hitchhiker's Guide thing, right? So, how many of these have we written on spec for people over the years, Tanya?
oh my
A
God.
dozen, maybe more? I mean, before I met you, I must have written probably 20 or 30 on my own. I've got a shelf that is sagging under the weight of them, that nothing can ever happen with these projects. Although occasionally, I might go back and take a character or some element that I liked from that and repurpose that in another script. But still, those projects are basically dead, right? There's nothing you can do with them. But what the WGA tells you and what the industry wants you to think is completely different than the reality. The reality is, even after you get represented, once you are sent out for meetings, right, the chances of you actually being paid money on an assignment are remote. Usually they will ask you to do work for free. This is totally against the WGA minimum basic agreement, but it happens every single day, and you need to be okay with that. If you're the writer who's like, sure, I'd be happy to develop that script with you, Mr. Producer. What's the pay? They'll say, pay? You are asking me for pay? I mean, this is how it is. WGA doesn't give a shit. They're eventually, yeah, if something starts moving forward with the project and it actually goes into production, yeah, you'll get paid. That's what we all hope. But really, it's about establishing relationships where you do enough of these that eventually, at some point, you will get paid for one of those things that you did at some point down the line. You better damn well have some alternative income coming in from other sides, folks, because this is the reality of the movie business right now. Unpaid work is where it's at. And I'm not just talking like indie producers. I'm talking who are the masters of that. Like, you'll probably never get paid working for indie producers unless the movie gets made. But even studio people with studio deals do this shit all the time. It's easy for them. Hey, this writer's willing to go generate 20-page outline for me for free. Yeah, it's how it works.
Yeah, and I mean, just to make clear, if you say no, they're just going to go to the next person in line because there's a very long line. And let me just also differentiate between studios where it's, a lot harder to understand because studios have a lot of money that they usually throw at properties that maybe they should not throw at. But
Oh yeah.
it's a lot easier, especially nowadays, to understand when indie producers do that because it's become so difficult to get a project off the ground these days. And what they need is they need a great polished script so they can attach a package, actors, directors, so then they can hopefully raise the money. So that there is a lot of, for indie producers in particular, there's a lot of work for free work involved as well that they do for a year or two before they get paid as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And even directors now, even like some name studio directors are having to, like direct shorts unpaid to demonstrate to the studio that like what their vision for this big name feature project is going to be before they get the job. I mean, there's so much of, basically the moneyed people using their power to get as much from the creative class as they possibly can without paying for it. We're basically powerless in this situation. Look, I know this sounds really depressing, but that's just because it is.
Okay, well, I think we should leave them on a high note.
Do you have that high note, Tanya? I'm kind of looking for it.
I'm digging for the high note. Look, the high note here is if someone's asking you to write something for them, that means they think you have the goods. Congratulations.
No,
That's my high note.
yeah, no, and look, ultimately that's what you want. You have two or three of these going with different producers at different times. Um, and the word is getting back to your management that, you're easy to work with and, they're enjoying the experience. That means that your manager is going to work that much harder for you. Or if you don't have a manager or an agent, that producer might say to you at some point, "Hey, who reps you, by the way?" And you'll go, "Oh, I'm a independent contractor right now. if you know anybody," and they'll say, "Yeah, yeah, I know a guy. Here, let me make a call." And boom, all of a sudden you're represented. So it's just, if you're that easy to work with person, then it will hopefully snowball. That's ideally what you're hoping for over time, is that all of this work that you're doing for free will eventually get you to the point where you're not doing it for free anymore. And there is once you reach a certain level of working writer slash creator, right? You may still have to write, a pitchment, as they call it, which is a combination of pitch deck and a treatment or an extended outline or something like that. But anything more than that, they're going to know that they're going to have to pay you. The whole write a draft for free and we'll see how it goes thing, that is only up to a certain level for the most part. So there you go.
There you go. And as always, if you have any questions, you can always email us at info@coverageinc.com. That's coverage inc, INK.com.
And if you like what you see here, folks, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything. It's just right there. There it is. Just press that button, share the video with friends, and feel free to reach out to us if you need some advice, because advice is always free, just like your writing assignments.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.